With respect to Iraq, we continue to see important progress across different parts of our strategy to support the Iraqi government.
Washington remains committed to the idea of a united Iraq, but it also boasts of its strong, long-standing relationship with the Iraqi Kurds.
Kurdish support was really critical for the unity government that emerged in Iraq in 2007 and 8. Without its participation of its Kurdish population would have meant an Iraq in which the Sunnis were an extreme minority, and it would have made it much more difficult to have a unity government.
I think we've had it both ways for a long time. I think that we've supported the Kurds to the extent that it's been beneficial for us, and while at the same time being very adamant that there's a unified Iraq, knowing that Baghdad is our big ally in the region.
Rhetorical support that you hear sometimes for Kurdistan will have to be clarified. And I don't think that at the end of the day, major powers like the United States will push hard for an independent Kurdistan because they see the geostrategic consequences of that.
Kurdistan remained largely free of the sectarian violence that racked the rest of Iraq in the years following the U.S. invasion. It's also grown accustomed to self-governance.
The reason why we have managed to avoid the violence is the public support the government, the public support the security forces. We've never had an insurgency in Iraqi Kurdistan.
Arguably, no portion of Iraq has done better in the wake of liberation of Iraq from Saddam Hussein's regime than Iraqi Kurdistan, which has prospered enormously. They have really surpassed, I think, the most wild expectations of what might happen in the decade after liberation from Saddam.
If you look at the development of Iraqi Kurdistan, you think, this is not the same country. This is already its own country. That's what it seemed like.
To some U.S. policymakers, Kurdistan's parliamentary democracy represents a success that the rest of Iraq can and should emulate.
I think you have to look at Kurdistan as a success story economically. You talk about democratic principles, institutions, strong military, a friend of the West.
The invasion of Iraq in 2003 really was a success in Kurdistan, and it brought to Kurdistan a pro-democracy, pro-American, moderate Muslim country, or almost country in the Middle East. So everything that most people see as a failure in Iraq writ large was a success in Kurdistan.
And to look at other cities and the universities and the infrastructure and the roads and all the rest of that is just to be impressed enormously by, again, what our friends in the mountains have done.
Kurdish independence could spark demands for partitioning Iraq's Sunni and Shia regions, redrawing the map of the Middle East.
One of the ideas that had floated around in the American government was a tripartite division of Iraq. It's one of the silliest ideas I've ever heard. I mean, the Shia have oil in the south, the Kurds have oil and an active and vibrant economy in the north, and the deal for the Sunnis is nothing.
That's an issue that we talked to the Kurds a lot about, and we advocated and urged them to remain in the Iraqi state and to think about it in terms of how they actually got the best of both situations. They have still strong autonomy, including their own autonomous military forces. They have strong self-government up in Iraqi Kurdistan. At the same time, they have influence in Baghdad.
If we want to decide that we think Iraq should not be the sovereign country that it is, and you want to start breaking it up, certainly the best way to do it is for us to decide to support Kurdistan on its own.